right, we are back in 80 days, and we're gonna try and finish up this run. As everyone can see, that we have been journeying around the world for 59 days and counting. So we have visited 25 of the 169 cities that are possible to visit, and our favorite transportation has been inventions versus air, land, or sea travel. We've traveled an extensive amount by many varieties of things, and we're still on our way. So we're going to pick up right where we left off. As you can see from the world, the red line is our path through the world, and the gray lines are the possible paths we could have taken that we know about. We have made it all the way to what is essentially South America, almost South America, and we still got some ways to go. So we have 80 days to make it back to London, and we'll see if we make it. So let's get back into this, okay? We are in Honolulu currently. Actually, we haven't even made it to the Americas yet, technically speaking. The continents, that is. So it has been an interesting ride into Honolulu. We actually finished a murder mystery on the transport that we were on, and we managed to solve it this time with the help of my lovely chat members. So here we are in Honolulu, ready to make our way forward with quite an extensive amount of money, to be honest. We've been doing good in the money department this time. It was as though Honolulu lived in one indrawn breath, a wheeling swath of sky, white-laced waves, and pristine sand bounded by black volcanic bluffs. The town was entirely hidden behind groves of coconut and eucalyptus. We took a short tour. "You look," said our coach driver. Hala hila. Hila hila. I'm very bad with Hawaiian, so I apologize to the Hawaiians for butchering their language. Like city folk. I was born in Paris, I nodded. My first breath was of her smoke and perfume. "So you are, like the great and sleepless city of Paris, always in a rush." He murmured something to his horse, which looked well-fed and high-spirited. "As a young man, I went to San Francisco to make my fortune. I, too, ran and scabbled in pursuit of the almighty dollar." "We are not pursuing wealth, monsieur," I corrected, though indeed Monsieur Fogg's fortune hung in the balance of his wager. Was our entire adventure merely a glorified pursuit of coin? Our adventure thus far had been somewhat harum-scarum. Barely we had placed our toes on dry land than we were looking to depart. Oh, I had seen many wonders, and yet each had been ultimately reduced to another mark in my master's ledger. "Do you not wish the freedom to exhale, Passepartout?" the coach driver asked. "To stop running and simply feel the wind upon your face and the sun warming you and the sound of the ocean like a heartbeat?" "I will take my moments where I may," Hilla Hilla, I agreed. "With my master, that is, where I find peace. Or if not peace, then surely it is purpose, and that is much the same." The coach driver sighed and turned his face up to the endless sky. "A man may find himself here," he told me, "but only if he wishes it." He invited us to his home that evening and fed us dough-like poi and bright-fleshed slices of orange and guava. But I still thought of the marks in Monsieur Fogg's ledger and the distances we had yet to travel. I knew no peace in Honolulu, but my purpose burned bright and drew me ever forward. We finished our night in Honolulu with a souvenir, a swirling conch shell collected from the beach as we walked back to our lodgings. And we have strengthened our relations with Monsieur Fogg because we spoke well of him, as any dutiful valet should. We're in good health. We have added a conch shell, which is worth money in Salt Lake City, but we are not headed that way, and we have far, far too much luggage. Goodness. But we must depart. We are headed to Panama City. We're gonna hire the extra space for our ridiculous amount of luggage. Oh, we can't even take it all. Okay, well, the leather gloves will be going. The driving goggles will move over, and I will move a harmonica over here, and now we have just what we need. Uh, oh, shoot. We still have too much. Well, I guess we are getting rid of a lot more things. This and well, we're not actually going to need this, and we're not going to need this. Okay, this is as good as it gets. Whew, we almost missed our boat. Whew. We boarded a sailing ship bound for Panama. Captain Lao Po introduced himself briskly, leaning upon a hardwood cane. My ma was a nice Samoan fisherwoman, and my papa an Iowan coal hauler in the harbor of Pago Pago. I inherited her broad back and his eye for the dollar. The crew was a mixed lot of Samoans, Hawaiians, Haitians, and Native Americans, all of whom spoke English, twanging with the tones of San Francisco Bay. Let's find out what the news has in store of us. Fog warning. His gentleman lost mind? Has gentleman lost his mind? Oh dear. They are assuming that our master is completely crazy. And I'm not entirely certain, since it's been a couple of days, what might have made them think we are insane. Or rather, that our master is, seeing as we are playing from the perspective of Jean Passepartout. But... oh my. Does the Times and the gossip of the Times, let me tell you. During the day, I spent my time eavesdropping, hoping to gather information for our next journey. I met a cheerful San Franciscan artist and had a pleasant, if unproductive, conversation that whiled the hours away. Monsieur Fogg and I shared a cabin, which was not so great an imposition. Indeed, we had lodged in many circumstances less congenial on our travels, and I slept soundly on our first night abroad. Or aboard. I can read. Truly I can. I promise I can. Oh, we did not fuss over fog, which is our rule of thumb. Oh dear. Madame Constanza, Captain Lopau's wife, served up our fresh-caught lunch of sea fish, though she confessed that she had not cooked it herself. Tupi's the cook, she whispered. I don't have his skill. Her blonde hair was swept over her face, framing a long, jagged scar which pinched one side of her mouth upward. I could not help but look at it, and she ran a finger down its length as I watched. You don't have to pretend you don't see it, Madame Costanza murmured. It is hard to ignore. My apologies, madam. I looked at my hands. It is none of my business. It wasn't my husband, if that's what you're thinking, she replied. I was a threshing automaton operator, and my machine threw a gear. She sucked in a breath. I was lucky to get away so lightly. I have friends who have lost entire arms and legs to such accidents. You are very lovely nonetheless, I said with gentle gallantry. She seized a knife from the table and held it to my cheek with a sudden, pained snarl. Oh, really? She breathed. Then would you like me to give you a mark like mine? I froze, and Captain Lao Po appeared as if by magic and settled his arm about Madame Costanza's shoulders. Please, he said in tones that beckoned command rather than request, refrain from upsetting my wife. Day 60, Monsieur Fogg murmured that night in his sleep, and still some distance yet to travel. This is actually not too bad. We tend to get at least to the Americas by day 60 most of the time. Most of the time. Having managed to offend Madame Costanza the previous day, I kept very silent when another passenger asked Captain Lopau how he had injured his leg. I fought a Siberian bear, he said with every appearance of sincerity. I cast a glance at Monsieur Fogg, who was too absorbed in making calculations in his ledger to notice. I heard, said one of the navigators, that you took a dagger to the knee in a duel with a beautiful pirate captain. Captain Lopau smiled. One of the engineers raised his mug. No, I heard you were mauled by a shark off Oahu. Don't be silly, interjected a coal hauler. It was a Haitian ovary Override? No, I butchered that one. Oh, hi, Chaotic Elk. Welcome, welcome. This is 80 Days, which is a game that is a choose your own adventure story based on Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days. Not that you can see it from the current artwork on screen, but it is a very steampunk version of that story with a very expanded um, repertoire. We are halfway through a run as it is already day 61 of this one, and but there's a lot more of a steampunk element to the world building of this version of that story than was in the original novel. So I do hope you enjoy it. The controls are very point and click simple. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it in chat. But thank you for joining me. It's lovely to have you. Shall I look at the captain or should I look at his wife? Let's see here. I am going to look at Madame Costanza. She's an interesting character. I looked at Madame Costanza, whose eyes were cast down demurely, though there was a bright smile on her lips. Oh no, she interjected in her soft tones. I think he took his wound rescuing a princess held captive by an evil lord. Costanza, Costanza, Captain Lopau chuckled. You have it backwards. It was the princess that wounded me. He mimed being struck in the heart. And the crew erupted in good-natured laughter, which carried on well into the night. Aw, he's very sweet on his wife. Hey, Trav. Nice of you to join me. Yes. As you said, there is a fair bit of replay value. Both me and Trav have played this game somewhat extensively. We haven't seen every piece of dialogue or every piece of story. There are cities we've never managed to reach, secrets that we've never managed to find. But yeah, this game is pretty awesome. We both enjoy it quite a bit. To Panama City. Madame Costanza knocked on my door in the afternoon. We are nearing Panama, she said, pulling shyly at her blonde braid. You should gather your things. You have been a most gracious host, madame. She looked rather wrong-footed by my declaration and then nodded once decisively. Be wary of the Haitian automata in Panama, she whispered. I nodded once, still wary of her. She did pull a knife on us earlier. I disembarked the ship with my master and greeted Panama City. Chaotic Elf, yes, you can find this game on Steam easily if you have Steam. I'm not entirely certain where else you can find it, but it's just 80 days, like it says in the corner up here. 80 as in the number, not as in the words. And it's a beautiful game. I cannot say enough about this game. I fawn over it every time I stream it. But the artwork is beautiful. All right, I am going to hit up the market as quickly as I can to see what will make me money, because I have been money-minded this run. So that, because the text of it is yellow, it does sell for more than I bought it, so I'm going to sell those. Let's see here. Sugarcane is valuable other places, so I'm going to grab it to see if I can't sell it somewhere. The whiskey is for conversations. I'm not going to pick them up. I generally don't care about conversations that often. The dinosaur jawbone is worth a lot of money in a place that I'm not sure I'm going to get to, and it takes up a ton of space. And the mate is also for conversations that I don't generally have. I could sell the hat here, but it's part of the Heavy Storm set, and as I still have to get across the Atlantic, I'm going to keep it. I have 2 out of 3 of the set as it is. So really, the only things I have in my luggage that is not part of a set that I either have a piece of or completed is just these 2 things, the amethyst and the sugarcane. So we'll see if we can't make money off of them. I must explore. I have the option of going to the bank to get money, but I don't need it with over 20,000 pounds. So I need to explore to find my way forward, which costs me time. Ooh, I can go north and I can go south. This has been my run to try and keep to southerly routes, so it looks like Lima is my way forward, but there was the option to go to North America, which I've done many, many times. Panama City seemed a town perpetually on the edge of disaster. A great number of inhabitants had immigrated to California during the gold rush 20 years ago. The 49ers, as they were called, had left empty spaces which were quickly filled by new immigrants, creating a multiracial polyglot society. I admired the Panamanian spirit. The town was a bricolage, a nation created from whatever materials were available, with all the uh, oh goodness, my brain has just paused on a word. The anarchic strength of such an origin. Oof, mangled my English there. Yay me. I'm apparently still waking up. I don't know why. It's the beginning of the early afternoon for me. Of course, there was the canal. The French had bought the rights of construction from the Colombians, but quickly ceded those rights to the Haitians after disease decimated their engineering corps. Haitians now virtually ran the city with their foreign wealth and, so the local rumor went, the blood-drinking Goudon machines they used to dig up the canal. I could not help but be curious, in particular about the supposedly mystical machines. They were elephant-sized steam shovels painted bright red and blue. Dyed rooster feathers adorned the boiler, and a single operator sat in the carriage to control the winch, boom, and bucket. Great quantities of stone and dirt were being thrown into the air, undercut by the whistle of steam escaping and boilers rumbling. As I watched, a tall, sharp-eyed fellow in a pinstriped suit glared at me. You here to watch or work? I am a visitor. Are you now? Well, the man puffed out his cheeks. I'm Gesner, the crew leader, and I don't allow any watching on my dig site. He pointed to one of the steam shovels. Get in. Oh, no, I couldn't. I raised my arms to ward him off. Really? Then get off my site. How much? Raised a fist in reply. Very well, I rising to the challenge in his tone, but I do not know how it works. Gesner caressed the excavator's bucket as I climbed over the engine into the cabin. Don't hurt him, he called up. Is there a manual? I asked, rather plaintively, eyeing the array of levers and dials before me. I really feel that I have not been given adequate training. Gesner Jr. will lead you right, he pronounced with finality. You called your machine after your own name? I marveled at his hubris. I designed all the steam shovels, but Fanchon gave them life. She's headed back to Haiti tomorrow morning. I don't know what I'll do without her. He nodded towards a tall black woman who was checking the fuel barrels, occasionally dipping a finger in a tarry black substance and tasting it. But enough talk. Time to dig. I examined the levers closely before selecting the most worn handle and easing it forward. The winch squealed and began to raise the boom with a vibration that I could feel in my bones. After a few cautious experiments, I fell into a rhythm, raised the bucket, scooped the packed earth, unload, and rumble forward. You're a born excavator, Gesner showered me with praise. Are you sure you have not done this before? I know, Trav, this is super interesting. I'm enjoying it. As I worked, I saw the woman called Fanchon moving away from the site. If she was an artificer, perhaps she would be useful, but my shovel would not be stopped or slowed, and I worked until evening. Interesting. I don't think we made any money there, although we should have. Right. None of this is anything we care about, so onward to Lima. Ooh, by gyrocopter. It leaves tomorrow at noon, so we will not be leaving today. So we must sleep in the hotel tonight. That evening, I strolled the streets only to find myself face home. The engineer Gesner had pointed out to me at the works. Ah, the visitor from France, she smiled lopsidedly. Have you come to take back your canal? It will not be so easy, she raised her fists playfully. Madame, I greeted her, and she took my hand. I was told you are leaving town, I said. She nodded. I am indeed, but I have she smiled. A little craft of my own devising, but it needs a few parts. You know how these things are. Is it a fast craft? The fastest, she nodded. When she works. That sounds most intriguing, I told her. Why, yes, she replied with a glitter in her eyes. To you Europeans, I'm sure it does. Perhaps we could travel with you? I asked, when your craft is repaired. She looked at me as though judging my character by inferring the way my parts fitted together. As I say, it will take some time to repair, or some manpower. Time and manpower, they are both realized by one thing. Name your price, I told her. She named a figure and it made my eyes water slightly. Well? I will ask my master, I muttered, and crept quickly away. Very good, she replied. I bid Madame Fanchon goodbye, at least, until we decided whether we could afford such help as hers. I made my way back to Monsieur Fogg, only to find myself accosted by a group of Panamanian dynamite blasters. They were a mix of city boys and Choco immigrants from the villages, united by their dislike of the Haitian digging crews. They seemed keen to talk. We are leaving Panama before our blood ends up in a vat. You should leave too if you have any sense. Where are you headed? We are making for Tabatinga in the Amazonas. Chaffil gave me a considering look. We may have some space for men of talent and determination. I considered their offer as I headed back to my lodgings. Men who spent their days blasting through mountains could prove to be useful travel companions if we wished to head into the interior of this vast continent. And we have learned routes. Ooh, baby. So, let's find out. We could go to Port-au-Prince for an extravagant amount of money, or we could go to Tabatinga, or we could go to Lima. I want to go to Lima. I'm going to Lima. This is going to be fun. Oh no, we don't have space. Well, all this is going, and as much as I like the gentleman traveler set, so is the cloak. I don't have the room. Off we go. Air Traveler's outfit is doing us a service here, thankfully. That's why we want to collect the sets, so that we can do things like that. Yes, Chaotic Elf. The art in this is absolutely beautiful. For its simplicity and the fact that it's mostly just very stylistic, it's gorgeous. And you haven't even seen some of the better vehicles or landscape designs that they have in here. It's just so pretty. I gush about this game all the time. I apologize. We found a Peruvian woman who was making the journey to Lima in an unsteady-looking gyrocopter. Still, once we had paid her a small fee to let us on board, I found she was most professional, going as far as changing into a uniform before taking controls of the craft. You fly this route regularly? I asked, realizing I should perhaps have ascertained that before we set off. She nodded, shouting back in the roar of the whirling blades, I live for the sky. At least, I think that's what she said. Ooh, what does the news have for us today? Mysterious French detective cracks millionaire miss murder case. So one of the beautiful things about this game is that if you check the news often, sometimes you end up in the headlines. In fact, quite often you end up in the headlines. And because in our previous session we did, in fact, crack a murder mystery, this is the headline from that circumstance. We are apparently a mysterious French detective now. But we've been a mysterious French something a number of times in this game through our many runs. So I love how if you have done something significant along your way of travel, it does end up in the news, which is lovely. We soared through the air, looking down on the vast ocean on one hand and the endless continents drenching away on the other. I asked our pilot about routes onward, and she shrugged. The fastest way out of this place is through Port-au-Prince, but getting there, that's something else. I'm going to do a converse because some people in this chat have not seen it yet, but you can see that time is still ticking on, so I can't take forever with it. Greetings, pilot. It's hard to hear above the noise. Tell me about Lima. I hear the Haitians want more influence over Peru. Lima to Machu Picchu. No such route, but I'd wager. But now, your first time in Peru. Will you come back? Indeed. I hope so, madame. There's much here to admire. See that you do. We will fly. What about Salvador? Can we get to Salvador? Sounds unlikely to me. Asion? Absolutely. One can travel aboard the Pride of the South from Lima to Asion. Awesome. So, because we were in that conversation, we have learned about the various cities and also about a route. So that's what the conversations are useful for. You can fill up your bags with items that will allow you to converse more with various types of NPCs in the game. I generally don't like to clutter up my bag with those things, so I generally like the sets that help with travel and keeping health high instead. So, but that's what a conversation tends to go, how it goes. The gyrocopter could not fly for several days at a time. In fact, it could barely manage several hours before it had to touch down and refuel. However, it did so using a large concave mirror and a piston of water, and whatever the effect involved was, it was extremely quick, and we were airborne within the hour. So it's kind of more of a hop. A series of hops that gets you forward quickly. Interesting. We arrived rather abruptly, circling twice over Lima before dropping, rather like a dog sitting down. Our pilot patted me on the shoulder as we disembarked. Enjoy the rest of your time in this part of the world, she declared. There's much here to be wondered at. I thanked her, and she waved us on our way. So yeah, the symbol here had a little quote in it because we have actually heard something about this city. Ooh, the false passport. Most of this is just stuff to sell other places. What I want is this. Is it worth the extra suitcase? No. I actually think we're okay on money. So I'm not going to buy anything here. I am going to explore because I've never been to Lima before. So let's find out what possibilities we have before we move forward. Ooh, I can get even further south if I want to. At day 65, I'm not sure I should, but I might just because. I browsed around, my ears open, learning options for how we might proceed. So let's see here. We can go to Asion. We can go to Santiago, which I think will get us over to Buenos Aires. Asion probably will get us to Salvador, Rio de Janeiro, or even Belém. This is my south route. Let's go south. Let's just go. The cargo steamer departs in 3 days. We can negotiate that for a lot of money. Okay, maybe that is not the route to go. What about this one? This one departs tomorrow. That is much more reasonable. I guess the Pride of the South is the way to go. I don't have the time for anything further, so we will have to spend the night in the hotel. But it is good. We were invited to a glittering party hosted by Gibbs & Son, the leading English merchant house in Lima. They took a proprietorial interest in any newly arrived Englishmen and, bien sûr, their loyal valet. Gibbs and Son made their money in guano, that is to say, fertilizer made of bird droppings. A rather dull treasure compared to silver and gold as mined by the Spanish conquistadors, and yet it was all anyone could talk of. Ooh. So, which group should I fall into? Should we talk to the European textile people, the social reformers, or the waitstaff and cooks? Because we are a valet. They are our people, essentially. Who should we talk to for this run to find more information? European textile people, social reformers, or the waitstaff? I guess it's up to me to pick. Fun times. We're gonna talk to the waitstaff. Waitstaff knows everything. They hear everything. I fell in with a group of harringed waitstaff and cooks who barely hid their contempt for the wealthy assemblage. Look at them, a dark-eyed kitchen maid sneered, talking of guano and counting their souls while the rest of us starve. The government makes all these new buildings and now a railway, the host's butler shrugged at his shoulders. But there is no food to buy in the shop. How is that? Public works will bring new investment, I suggested. It is long-term thinking. Too long-term for me, he snapped, and too long-term for the people who are starving. You think they should make an agreement with your richer neighbors? Owing money is owing money, whoever you owe it to, the butler said ominously. Still, the Haitians have done well for themselves. Maybe they are a good choice. Soon after, I collected Monsieur Fogg and returned to our hotel, my head spinning with the political complexities of agriculture, fertilizer, and Peru. I'm pleased to say that I did not dream of birds or their precious nitrogen-rich excrement. Thank goodness. All right. We shall embark. Woo, that physical restorative set. Best set in the game. I try to grab it every time. A handful of protesters flung guano at the gleaming new steam train as it pulled out of Lima Station, but our carriage windows were thankfully spared. Waste of good guano, the stately matron across from us murmured, rearranging her improbably large, brightly feathered hat. Do you not believe in political protest, madame? I inquired with a twinkle in my eyes. The woman looked over with surprise, as though only just noticing our presence. Her eyes were intensely dark and lively with intelligence. And who, pray, are you? This is my master, Monsieur Fogg, and I am his humble valet, Passepartout, I said. I am Professor Gabriella Sanabria. She inclined her head grandly. Let me guess. You're a mammalian sort of fellow, aren't you? California or Caniformia or Filiformia, I wonder. She's asking if we are a dog or a cat. Filiformia. The professor sniffed. Doesn't surprise me one bit. Just then the guard entered to check our tickets, granting me a brief reprieve from a strange conversation with an even stranger woman. Our character is now zestful. What does the news bring us? Nation threatened by cattle influenza. Well, that's not good. Not good at all, because that's exactly where we're going. We paused for a whole day on the banks of Lake Titicaca, so the proper checks of documents and luggage could be performed before we crossed into Bolivia. I made tea for my carriage mates. Though I could steep an excellent cup of tea in a hot air balloon buffeted by storm winds, there was nothing quite like a quiet, stationary moment to boil one's kettle. I had rather grown to appreciate small moments of peace on this breakneck adventure of ours. Ascion threatened by refugees. Well, this is gonna get real spicy. I passed the time on our second day. Looks like we have the option of making money, perhaps for betting on competitive charades, talking to see what we can find going forward, or just watching the scenery go by. I think talking to passengers is our way forward today. I passed the time on our second day talking to other passengers, trying to find options for our next leg. I fell in with a nervous Irish master, whom I quickly abandoned as knowing nothing. Unfortunately, we tried. And the gold prices are now being threatened in the place we are at. Clearly, we haven't done anything in Lima that allows us a cool mention in the Times. The professor came to stand beside me at the windows as we traveled slowly upwards into the mountains. What do you make of the country? She demanded. In a word, if you please. Large. That is no way to describe a country, she replied coldly. The size in it is an entirely passive element. With that judgment passed, she moved away down the train, chuckling to herself about something. We have met a person who I do not know the ins and outs of. Strangely enough, we did not stop at the Paraguayan border, though a pair of artificers came through and checked the train. I asked their purpose politely, and they gave me identical looks of surprise before glancing pointedly out the windows. Paraguay just lost the war, of course. What war? Are you truly so ignorant? The artificer sneered. Paraguay fought the joint forces of Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. Little wonder their country is now in ruins. He pointed through the windows. Instead of green fields and villages, I saw churned up earth, piles of rubble and ash. Vast automata lay bloodied and rusted in the fields, giving the landscape an altogether foreboding look. I could only imagine what we would find when we reached the city of Ascion. Oh dear. To the market! Just talking things. Could make a little bit of money. I'm not going to bother. All right. Let us explore our way forward, shall we? I was taken aback to discover patrols of artificers walking the war-ravaged streets of Ascion as the locals scurried about with their heads ducked low. A passing Guarani man noticed my expression of surprise and jerked his head towards a nearby alcove after casting a wary glance at the nearest patrol. I followed him into the shadows. He told me his name was Monsieur Amaru. You should not stare at the artificers so boldly, he hissed. They are the new masters of Paraguay. Do you mean to say artificers rule here? I could not help squeaking a little in my surprise. The Artificers Guild call themselves our guardians and caretakers, but you see the truth of it. They are in charge of Paraguay now, and they have taken over Buenos Aires completely. Why do you need caretakers? I inquired, or guardians for that matter. We used our automata to fight our war until the surrender a few months ago, and so the guild judges us criminals, Monsieur Amaru said bitterly. Ha! Our only crime was losing the war, and now we pay the price. Oof. What do we think? Do we want to defend the guilds? Do we want to be upset with the guild for their interference? Or do we want to be realistic? I don't know. I'm not certain what choice this will do. Not been through here before. So I think I'm going to do this one. It is no use complaining. You gambled and lost, I shrugged. That is the risk every gambler must accept when they decide to play. Monsieur Amoureux was silent a long moment before nodding. True enough, my friend, he admitted. But he made a sweeping gesture encompassing his ravaged and ruined city and shook his head. The stakes were too high. Much, much too high. And with that, Monsieur Amoureux took his leave, and I hurried back to my master, trying very hard not to think of wars and wagers and losses too costly to bear. We can get to Buenos Aires, but we know that Buenos Aires is pretty destroyed as well. We might be better going to Rio de Janeiro, actually. That leaves in 2 days, but we can make it go tomorrow for no charge. So that is what we're going to do. That works out for us. We passed an anxious night with our 80-day deadline looming. Every sunset seemed to carry extra weight. We took a room and settled in. I washed and hung our linens to ensure everything was in place for our inevitable departure. Yeah, it's day 70. We need to get a move on. So to Rio de Janeiro we go. And we have the dusty road gear, some of it anyway, so that helps. We paid to travel in one of the caliches plying the regular route between Astion and Rio de Janeiro. The sea, I could hardly wait, but I would need to as the journey was going to Let's see what the news has to say. Race hots up as fog keeps going. An interesting line, but yes, we're going. We now need to make it back to London as quickly as we can. The only other passenger in our caliche was Madame Maldonado, a Paraguayan soybean farmer angling for permission to trade in the Empire of Brazil. How very ambitious. I kept my tone neutral, and she responded with a sharp grin. Now calling a merchant ambitious is the most obvious flattery, she pretended to fan herself. Are you trying to flatter me, monsieur? Indeed I am, madame. I leaned a little closer. Is it working? She gave a sudden, delighted laugh, and to my surprise, we kept up a spirited conversation all through our first day's travel. Didn't manage to grab that. All the rattling around through war-ravaged jungle and dusty fields of battle had given my master a blinding headache, and I occupied myself with Madame Maldonado as a distraction from his surly mood. Monsieur Fogg was not, I think, particularly impressed by our chattering voices. Soon the devastation of Paraguay gave way to the wealth of the Empire of Brazil, and we found ourselves approaching the outskirts of its sprawling capital city, Rio de Janeiro. I wish you luck, Passepartout, Madame Maldonado pressed my arm once we disembarked, and then disappeared into the swirling crowds all around us. Unfortunately, we did not assist by being quiet with his headache, so our relations have deteriorated just a little. All right, what does the market offer? Nothing of interest. Well, let us explore our way forward from here. All right, we can get to Salvador, but that is not something we want. Rio de Janeiro was rather wasted on my master, as he was a firm subscriber to the Englishman's thinking on beaches, that they were, in sum, a place where dirt met water. He was ill-suited to the beach, and so his sentiments were something of a boon. I had no desire to comb out sand out of his moustache. I had plenty of impossible tasks without adding to their number. Instead, we took a newly built glass-walled cable car from Babylonia Hill to the summit of Pau de Asikar. Maybe? Pretty sure I mangled that, so I apologize. Which in English means Sugarloaf Mountain. I watched my master as we ascended, trying to discern whether the panorama all around us affected him at all. His eyes roamed over the vista eagerly, despite his fixed expression. He was not made out of stone after all. All right. We would like to go to Freetown. It leaves tomorrow at 4, so that works out for us. We will pass the night. Another night, and the clock was forever ticking upwards. With the last few hours of the evening, I went to stretch my legs, but found nothing of any great interest. All right. Time to head off to Freetown. Whew. Air Traveler's outfit is doing us a service. We caught a cargo ship carrying disassembled parts and machinery, bound for a new ironworks in Freetown. We could build a smelting furnace in the cargo hold, the first mate informed us with no little pride. Transporting heavy machinery by air was expensive indeed, and I wondered at the efficiency of it. The owners of the new ironworks are eager to begin, explained the first mate. They have money to waste, so why should we complain? Let's not complain. Let's find out what the news is. Fog burdened by possessions will various cost him a day. It's only 3 suitcases, guys. I passed the time on the airship, tending to my master, as best I could, trying to take his mind off our impending return to London and our equally impending deadline. Little did I know I would soon be cursing my arrogance, for as the English say, counting my chickens that we might ever return at all. Well, our relations have strengthened again, but that's ill-boding. We made good time out of port, and I found myself watching the clear skies and glittering ocean with a sense of approaching contentment when a piercing whistle interrupted my reverie. The airship shuddered and convulsed, and I slid across the suddenly tilted deck. "Harpoon!" the captain cried. "We are under attack!" I thought only of my master in our cabin and tried to crawl towards one of the hatches in search of him. The airship tilted and bucked, and I saw an enormous harpoon had pierced her envelope. She was deflating at a prodigious rate, plummeting towards the ocean below. I would not die like this, on a sunny day amongst virtual strangers in an unfamiliar place. We crashed with an almighty judder, and I felt the water pull me down with a sense of unreality. It was cold. I was so cold. And that was the last thing that I remembered. Uh-oh. This is not good. On day 74, this is very much not good. I awoke to a warm hand on my face and a voice pitched low in my ear. "Be easy, my friend," it said, soft and sweet. "You are safe now." Where am I? My question came out an unintelligible mumble, and I felt a hand smooth my wet hair back. "Shh," it said, and I swear I saw a flash of metallic fin as I slipped back into unconsciousness. Oh my. This has taken a turn for the interesting. I awoke in a gleaming hall of brass and blackly glinting obsidian. Everything was dappled in blue-green light, twisting the shadows into unfamiliar shapes. I lay still and quiet, not wanting to alert anyone who happened to be nearby. It was silent in the hall, a deep silence layered over the sound of lapping water. I looked up and saw above me a curved dome of distorted glass, pushing back the ocean. Shoals of fish cavorted beyond it as though through a window. Was I still dreaming? The shock was too much for me, and I slipped back into swirling darkness. We have 4 days to get to London. Oh dear. I don't think we're going to make it this time. I awoke to the sound of laughter. Once more, the impossible dome lay above me, and I found myself once more unable to stop staring. A strangely familiar voice spoke. It seems too wondrous to be real, does it not? I turned to look and saw a creature with coal-black skin, close-cropped hair, and a thinly smiling mouth. My captor? Rescuer? Stepped more fully into the light, and an androgynous woman wearing a thin drape around her hips and chest. Her arms and legs were pitted with brass and copper ports, as though for attaching machinery. "Where is my master?" I demanded. "Ah, you speak of Monsieur Fogg, do you not?" She inclined her head. "He asked after you. He is well, as are the others." But where is he? Quite safe. She pulled me to my feet and bade me follow. We walked through the hallways of carved stone, gaslit corridors draped with rich tapestries, vast rooms filled with churning machinery, all tended by people with black skin and copper ports marking their limbs. This place, she said, is called Atlantis. I. What? I croaked, feeling my knees. Perhaps it would be more accurate to say that we call this place Atlantis, she amended. We built it so that we could be free. So this is not the ancient city lost beneath the waves. She smiled. No, nor have we landed here from the moon. We have simply left the surface behind. She looked at me with kindly eyes, and I saw the cold steel behind them. Every one of us was once a slave, and we took the technology that enslaved us and built this place as an escape. Who, after all, would look for us here? She laughed, and it was high and clear and beautiful, full of the promise of hope. We entered a vast gaslit cavern with a wide pool at the center. There were men and women frolicking within, but men and women such that I had never seen before. Delicate copper fins were attached to the ports on their arms, and their legs were encased in glittering automaton tails. Welcome in, Winter Fairy. We have found mermaids in a place that they have named Atlantis, in the middle of the Atlantic. And we have 4 days to reach London, so we're probably not going to win this run. But here we are. We are mermaids. We are with mermaids. But welcome in, welcome in. It's nice to have you. You are mermaids, I exclaimed. We are Atlanteans, she corrected. We are creations of technology and human invention, not magic. A tall Atlantean with a scar bisecting his neck swam up to the edge of the pool. You should not be alone with a stranger, my lady, first. I mean no harm, I said, raising my arms reassuringly. Why does he call you first? Because she is our leader, the man gritted out with a glare. That is so, the woman smiled, her teeth charmingly uneven. I am the first who escaped, reborn in shipwreck and storm. Very poetic, I crossed my arms. But what does that mean to me? First waved a hand at me, tiring of my arguments. Rejoin your friends, she declared. They were, at least, polite. It was day 76. We had barely 100 hours remaining to return home. Oh boy. Freetown free from piracy increase. That's good for Freetown, I suppose. But, oh dear. Monsieur Fogg and the crew of the airship were staying in quarters near the top of the dome. I could not help but notice that the doors were bulkheads, as though this room could be flooded and then pumped free at will. So far, my master declared, our hosts have been civil, if not entirely courteous. They cannot keep us here forever, I remarked. They must send ships to the surface. Monsieur Fogg looked upwards, and so did I, just as the dark shadow of some strange deep-sea fish slid away overhead. We must hope that they do, he replied thoughtfully. Our options seem limited. This is an outrage, sputtered the airship captain. My business will dry up if I'm trapped down here. We should appeal to their sense of justice, I suggested. I do not think they are a cruel people. They blew up the envelope of my airship and raided its body for parts, the captain spat back. They are thieves and would-be murderers. But my master held up a hand. Be steady. My good valet may yet be right. He has been known to show some perspicuity in the past. With that, he began banging on the bulkhead door of our room, and that was when I realized it truly was a prison. Indeed, Trav. Indeed he is. Nope, I missed that one. The first had me dragged before her the next day. Her message was clipped and to the point. You are all free to go, now that we have the parts and machinery we needed. I waited for the catch that felt must be coming, but no such trick appeared. Do not look so suspicious. We are not in the business of keeping slaves. And besides, she laughed darkly, who would believe any tales you choose to tell? And if I choose to stay, I suggested. The first laughed at me. You would drown, she replied coldly. Believe me, you would. I backed quickly out of the hall. Monsieur Fogg was well enough and most eager to continue our journey. He did not seem to care very much about Atlantis or its wondrously monstrous inhabitants, beyond informing me that the first had agreed to let us accompany one of their trading missions in a submersible. We will be in Ponta della Agata in 2 days, he all but crowed. Their engines must be extremely efficient. Before I left, I snatched a memento from the dock, a discarded arm flipper. If only so tomorrow I could prove to myself our trip between the waves had been real. A new fantastic serial begins today. The City of Slaves Beneath the Sea. Ooh, interesting. we haven't even got surfaced yet, and we're already spreading news about Atlantis. We made a strange company indeed. Monsieur Fogg and I, the two passengers, an Atlantean as pilot, and several other Atlanteans swimming alongside the submersible with their flashing fins and tails. I wish I could do the same, I sighed longingly. The pilot laughed. It is not so simple. Implanting the ports takes months, and there is a risk of rejection. He touched one of his own as if in memory. And then there are other alterations. Other alterations? I prompted. Artificial air pockets and some filtration systems. He shrugged evasively. There is a heavy price to rebanking yourself. He shook his head and firmed his jaw. But one I would pay and pay again. Famed lunatic Phineas Fogg loses far-fetched wager. It is day 81. We have lost again. Ponte de la Grada threatened by telegraph lines, of all things. The Atlanteans put on trousers and dresses to cover up their ports. They were practiced at keeping their origin secret when they traded. What is it you seek here? Oranges. We will fill our holds with oranges, the pilot grinned. The first will be pleased. They are her favorite. And with that, we parted ways, and my master and I went ashore at Ponte de la Grada and stood for a moment once more below the wide, glorious sun. We have lost the wager, but we must continue on. Ponte de la Grada was the largest settlement on the volcanic island of São Miguel in the Azores. Delicate pewter automata harvested fruit from the abundant orangeries, watched over by the Portuguese Portuguese gentlemen farmers in pristine white villas. Monsieur Fogg, of course, took in the pleasant environs with one cursory glance and bent his head to his almanac. We have come so far, I marveled. I can scarcely believe it. My master looked up from his note-taking briefly. We are not in London yet, he said primly. Find out when the next airship to Lisbon departs. As you say, monsieur. My master focused once more upon his almanac. I paused to breathe in the scent of citrus on the way to the harbor. It lingered in my nostrils for days, long after we had departed the Azores. As we lay down to sleep, Monsieur Fogg murmured, Today is day 83, Passepartout. We have failed. Do not lose heart, I advised him. Indeed not, he agreed. We must still return home, and as fast as possible. So forward we go. Looks like we have a route directly to London, which is the one we will likely take. We can depart to Lisbon immediately, but we want to go to London. We have a lot of money. No charge in 2 days. Or we could leave right now. I actually think no charge in 2 days is as good as it's going to get for us, unfortunately. No charge tomorrow. Never mind. I fixed it. By cheating. Well, not necessarily cheating. What does the market have? I'm going to sell this here. the Desert Traveler set, which we don't need. So I'm not even going to bother. To the hotel. It was with a heavy heart that I watched the sun go down. 80 days had come and gone, and here we were, still marking time and not yet home. As night fell, I went to stretch my legs and took full advantage of some distance from Monsieur Fogg. When I returned, both my spirits and, I fancy, his were much improved. To London we go. Oh, we can't even take everything we have. All right, well, we'll get rid of this. We'll get rid of this. We'll get rid of this and this. Don't need railway stuff. We don't need this. And I think the rest of this will fit in here. So that should do it. Oh, we can't even take luggage. Okay, well, I guess all of this is going away. Goodbye, goodbye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. We can take nothing. Here we go. The 6 of 1 was a privately owned airship that we spotted quite by chance as it landed to refuel. The captain was an unsavory sort, but that worked to our advantage. He was easily bribed into flying us all the way to London. Well, fairly easily. Next stop, our captain called, Hyde Park and a cup of tea. Prepare for fog, our predictions on where erratic gentlemen will go next. London, of course. Monsieur Fogg looked out of the observation deck windows with perfect calm. Though the wager was lost and he was no doubt ruined, I watched him closely for fear he might do something drastic. I spent the remaining time ironing, which is a great solace to an uneasy soul. We tethered at the airship dock in Hyde Park and felt for the first time in 84 days the feel of English soil under our shoes. At long last, we had returned to London. We hailed one of the steam carriages idling on the banks of the Serpentine in Hyde Park. To the nearest pub, I instructed. My master shook his head. To Savile Row, he corrected calmly, and turned his face to the window. We had lost the wager, and by only a handful of days. One fewer delay, one speedier journey, and we might well have returned to London in glorious triumph rather than ignominy. My master entered his domicile with his habitual tranquillity, though he instructed me to leave the windows shut up so that his neighbors would not mark his return. I prepared his supper, and he ate heartily, as if he were not utterly ruined. Passepartout, he began. You have performed your duties with competence and skill, Passepartout, he said, as though remarking upon the weather. And what will you do now, monsieur? I asked, trying to emulate my master's coolness and aplomb. My course, Passepartout, Monsieur Fogg interjected smoothly, is fully decided upon. We must attempt the journey around the world once more. Monsieur Fogg consulted his ledger and tapped his pen. Perhaps this time, he said thoughtfully, a more southerly route? Our journey around the world is complete. We managed it in 84 days rather than 90 the last time we lost, but we have managed it. Adventurer Phileas Fogg loses wager. Fogg blames incomplete Indian railway, Indian rebels destroying train line in Chittagong, and capture by Kali cultists for 84-day journey. My goodness, it was very interesting. So we visited 31 cities, traveled quite a bit. Our favorite transport was inventions, and we are only a little over 7,000 in debt by the end of it, which is far better than the over 23,000 we did the first time we lost. Our character, it was zestful, we were passionate in manner, and our valeting was remarkable. We were also comfortable with Fogg, which is pretty darn good. Yes, Trav, better than our stint with cholera in Honolulu the first time we lost. But that leaves us after 6 days of playing this game with 2 losses and 2 wins in the game. So we can continue playing 80 days. Of course, today we're really only halfway through my usual stream time. Or we can switch games to Weyrwood, which is not as pretty, graphically speaking, as 80 days, but also just as much reading to be done. A new story to enjoy picking our way through. It will take me a few minutes to set up, but I would like to know what Trav and Winterfairy thinks. Do you want another interesting route in 80 days, or do we want to try a completely new story? Uh, Weirwood is a choose your own adventure story by a developer called Choice of Games. Um, the store page in Steam says, "Advance in society and bargain with creatures in the wood in a Regency fantasy of manners, daring, and magic. Will you join your daemon overlords in destroying your hometown, or will you defy them?" So it is a Regency styled story, very Jane Austen esque, but it has magic and daemons and interesting things happening. It is, as I said, very much less art. It is a lot more just staring at pages of text. But it is a choose your own adventure, much like 80 Days is, and I have it on standby if you're interested in a new game. So since my audience can consists of 2 friends, shall we switch, or would you like to go around the world again? All right, new game. So please hold while we switch games. Just making sure that the settings are set it up correctly. All right. And here we are. So this is Weyrwood, spelled Weyr, Weyrwood. It is, as I've said, a choose your own adventure game. It is Regency styled, and it has uh, social politics and magic and all kinds of interesting things. This one will require a lot more reading on my part. And you can see it is very much not a game with much in the way of artwork. So you will have to enjoy your imagination on this one a bit more. Chapter 1, The Return. The heavy door to Messrs. Hallwood and Penn's law firm closes firmly behind you, leaving you in the street. In the morning light, the cobblestones reflect gold. The limestone buildings, neoclassical facades, worn smooth by weather and mist from the wood, shine a burnished silver. Your lawyer was very congenial, very conciliatory, but all his well-turned phrases and sympathetic manners revealed the same result. Prosper has confounded you again, with all its bizarre conventions and unique legal intricacies. Your fortune, paltry though it may be, is bound up in the property of your guardian left to you. One thing is certain: you need the money. And now we have a choice. I have a certain lifestyle to maintain. My gambling debts are a millstone around my neck. I've amassed followers, servants, and dependents who rely upon me, and I cannot disappoint them, or I need it for my studies and my books. This choice will ascertain pretty much what kind of person I am going forward. Before we make that choice, I can also show you our stats. So this is our stage. As you can see, we are at 50% of most everything except for full health. We have 50% boldness and 50% delicacy, 50% subterfuge, and 50% principles. You'll understand more about stats as we go along. We also have some reputation here. We're equally respectable and scandalous, as well as influence, dangerous, woodbound, weird sense, and philanthropy is also at 50%. So we're pretty neutral across the board on all of those. As for our relationships, here are all the possible relationships that we can have. And we are neutral across the board with all of them as well. So the Weyrs, the Damons, Hippolyta is a person. Colonel Ajax is also a person. Lady Eugene, Wren, Danae, A. Wakeford, and Yocasta are all neutral at this point. The most, except for the top two, most of the rest of these people are very interesting characters that we will meet in the future. And we also have 9 Spina or Spina. I probably will call it Spina or Spina in turns. My apologies, I don't actually know what the official pronunciation of it is, but that is the currency that we have. We could view the glossary if we want. There's quite a bit of terms. We may gloss over that later, but not right now. It's not very long, as you can see. And then there are achievements in the game, which I have, since I've played this before, already gotten a few of them. But we will now return to the game. So, to start us off, what would our audience like us? What kind of person would our audience like us to be to start out? Do we want to have a certain lifestyle, some gambling debts, followers aplenty, or are we a studious person? Tell me what you would like to see. What kind of person shall we be this time? And I will attempt to keep it in mind for playing through the game what our priorities will be. All right, Trav says that we should be a person with a certain lifestyle to maintain. And as that is the default choice, it could be a few months, if not more, before your inheritance can be liquidated into movable currency and you can return to the city, which leaves you here with Prosper in all of its questionable glory. The season is fast on your heels, and while it's not a bad time to be here, there is an itch in this place, a quiet pressure that is unlike any other, a slow terror that digs in at unexpected moments. For the town is crouched against the wood, and the wood casts a long shadow. Prosper is a paradox, as it always has been. A small town at the edge of nowhere, huddled at the edge of the wood and the wilds that lay beyond. It always seemed a poor choice for a hideaway of the beau monde. Certainly, it's a far cry from the bustling city you've quit to see to your guardian's affairs, but no less tantalizing for all that. In contrast with the crowded labyrinthine city, Prosper is well planned and well composed. Sweeping circular drives show off half-moon rows of grand townhouses, ostentatious in their well-balanced. The sun hangs in the sky, and in this light, with the roofs gleaming, the spectacle of life that is here looks appealing indeed. Here, at the center of town, gentry and commoners mingle. In the summer, the seasonal miners and dock workers congregate around the marketplace and river harbors, while on the other side of town, well-dressed persons of all possible descriptions amble and nod their way through the streets, chasing fortune in their own way. Also, in the midst of it all, the daemons, spiky and resplendent in frock coats of crimson, vermilion, cerulean, and gold, are like glowing coals against their equipages and gay retinues of will-less fallen. This, the mundane and the weird, pressed in too close proximity, two edges of your hometown. So, do we consider our hometown to be a hellhole? That it has merits, but we prefer the city? That it has a certain nostalgia, or is it fat to us after all these years away? Seeing as we have a lifestyle to chase or to maintain, what do we think of this strange backwater place? Okay, Trav. I guess hellhole it is. We will decide that it is a hellhole because we can't possibly have anything good here. It's a hellhole. Perhaps an oversimplification, but there are many things you'd rather not wrap your head around now that you have the capacity to understand them better. It has much to recommend it, although much to deter a person from ever returning. Your guardian warned you not to be taken with it for all prosper born and bred. You notice a few changes as you wander. There is a new opera house in the center of town. The town hall has a newly painted exterior, and the ditch near your house, which you once stepped in and sprained your ankle, has been filled in. However, altogether, it is still much. It is too much still the same, still as you recall. For though not visible from the center of town, there is also the wood, whose essence seeps out and pervades everything, rendering everything mischoked and honeyed with a sweet sage scent. Many have made their fortunes here. Many have lost more than their lives. Beyond the city limits, there is the wood and the wilds, constantly arranging and rearranging themselves. Woe betide anyone who should take their life into their hands and go there. A barouche with colors of gold and black drives in front of you. You step back on. The top is down, and its daemon occupant is visible. He is attired in a crimson robe with falls of lace and is looking straight at you. His chin is very pointed, and his skin is pallid against the fine cloth. His thralls, as always, drive. They are grayish and voiceless, living shadows, the fallen. Most of the other willed humans you see avert their gazes automatically. It is not good to look too closely at the daemons or the retinue. It is not wise to search into the fallen's eyes, for you might recognize someone you once knew. But as for you, you have not yet fallen into these habits, these patterns of being. So, shall we look freely, pretend not to notice, or can we not bear the sight of the fallen? What kind of person are we from the city? I personally would go with pretend not to notice myself. The less they observe your interests, the less they have to use against you. Still, you look very carefully indeed once the barouche has passed you by. This one must be a high-ranking one, judging from the quality and cut of his clothing and the ostentatious vehicle he drives. If this were one were human, he would be beyond the height of fashion. He is not, however, and every detail only serves to emphasize his coat fits tightly around his narrow shoulders, and his pale fingers, showing from beneath the tapered sleeves, are one joint too long. Also from his brow, spiraling out, are two carved whitish horns. Each shining button and gilded braid that adorns his clothing adds to his general air of carefully polished menace. The moment passes. You breathe easier once the barouche is out of view. Daemons. Scary things. Terrifying. When you were younger, you remember seeing one or two daemons out and about per day, unless it was market day. Certainly not many in this quarter. You used to go to the main square and watch them, observing which ones had horns, which had hair bound up in clouds of moths or strange pale butterflies, and which were garbed in complete darkness. But now they seem to be everywhere, carried about by their fallen in sedan chairs or riding in smart carriages. Whatever the fallen think about Whatever the fallen think about it, indeed, thought remains behind their vague, fixed expressions. They do not protest. If you lose your spina, you too will fall. That is the tithe to the demons, the cost of enjoying the status of the gentry here in Prosper, the sacrifice into which you were born, here at the edge of wood and the wilds. The truth didn't always seem so harsh, but you have grown. The street comes into focus again. All is still well. The heady aroma of roasted almonds sold on carts in the market. You remember racing down to the market to buy them, pockets jangling with florets. Your guardian worried about you, tearing about like that, unseemly for a young person of any sex. Such was your way, however. Were we impetuous and didn't care if we bumped into people? Did we find ways to get around the rules and learn things that we shouldn't have? Were we good at judging when to get in trouble and when to toe the line, or or did we absorb knowledge like a sponge? What kind of person were we? I know that we have a lifestyle to maintain, but, well, we can maintain a type of sort of personality. What kind of person shall we be? All right. I was good at judging when to get into trouble and when to toe the line. Manners can save the day, sometimes. Montague's household was a warm one to grow up in, though strict. Your guardian was bracingly correct in behavior, manners, and form, and presented neutrally, as a person rather than a man or woman. It was always made clear that, as long as you acted within the borders of propriety, you were free to decide how the world perceived you, in terms of clothes, expression, and manners of address, based on what felt right and true. As a child, you felt you were, and now we have the option to say what gender we are. Be a girl, a boy, a person. Even then, neither boy nor girl felt quite right describing us, or even then, sometimes I felt more like a boy and sometimes more like a girl. We have options, as it were. We don't have to go by my gender, even though I am streaming this. We can go by a gender, any gender, really. And the story will, apologies for the blur, but unfortunately the game is doing that. It is not me. Um, but yes, we can be quite a bit any gender we'd like, or a gender for that matter. Which I appreciate the choice of games uh, publisher for doing. It makes this game feel very inclusive, so that you can play as you feel best, or you can explore another option if you like during the course of the story. Indeed, Trav, indeed. I personally think that for this run, a person, considering that we have every gender we could possibly want in our uh, listening to us, that might actually be the best option here for us. So I'm going to go with it. We are a person. Of course, you make a Fallen London reference, Trav. Of course, you do. Fallen London. Such a fun game. School molded you, however. You were among persons of taste, and your education included, apart from the usual subjects of grammar, arithmetic, the sciences, and music, lessons of a more social nature. You learned those elements pardon me, necessary for good conduct in society, and tempered your conversation skills and manners. Other subjects dealt with activities, not just dealing with people. These could pave your way into society as well. So this is where our stats are going to be more heavily affected. What we choose here um, will change our stats, which I can. We'll just go back to the stats screen to show just what has changed. So we're slightly more delicacy than bold. We have a slight bit more subterfuge than principles. We are a little bit more accomplished than we were, but everything else is fairly neutral. We're still pretty neutral everywhere else. So this will change some of that. So we could excel at talking to people and took naturally to classes in oratory and persuasion. There's almost nothing I could not convince someone of. We could easily feel what others needed and tried to help them. I was always the person that my friends can. We could excel at writing, shooting, sport, and games of all sorts. I was almost always out of doors. I developed those accomplishments that were always welcome in young persons of quality: music, drawing, dancing, languages, and art. I excelled at book learning above all, or I developed my natural sense of morality and principles. Um, these stats, in a way, will have an effect on um, whether or not other characters in the game like us or dislike us. It will give us different options later on, depending on what we're good at and what we're bad at. So we have to decide what kind of person we are and which direction we want to go with our skills at this point. So um, we did take the option that meant that we are much more likely to be a good judge of people. So we might want to consider persuasion or being a confidant. But really, any of these fun options. What's the consensus, Trav? Since you're the one who's been answering the most. Um, what do you think we should take? Excuse me. She's probably going to get her son from the bus and get him settled. I honestly think that being persuasive is pretty good. It will give us a lot more dialogue options. So I'm going to take that one then. Oh, hey, welcome back, Winter Fairy. Um, we're picking skills. Trav and I have decided that being persuasive is a good idea, but seeing as we are, you're welcome to to read through our options and pick one as well, while I attempt to keep my voice from going. So we have okay, persuasion it is. That seems to be the consensus. Not everything came naturally, however. What do we struggle with? This is our flaws. Do we struggle with music, dancing, and art? Do we find sports and physical subjects more difficult? Do we not have a fun time with books? Do we have a hard time empathizing with others and prefer discussions of reason over emotions? Or do we not like discussions of morality and principles? Which one is our flaw? Not a book learner? All right. We like talking to people, we don't like books. Got it. You were young and lived in a world all your own. Ah, yes. A waft of rosemary propels you towards the bakery. Two sedan chairs carried by thralls pass you on your way. It's a trifle disconcerting. It has nothing to do with you, surely, and yet the dread in your stomach won't settle. If there are more daemons about, there are certainly more fallen, too. Best to get out of Prosper as soon as possible to keep your will intact. What is disconcerting is how quickly you fall back into life here and prosper. You left when you were 12 years old, sent off to the city to obtain schooling and polished. You never looked back. We so love the city because we have a lifestyle to maintain. Why should I? The city is eminently a better place to make one's way in society and at less peril. Yes, yes, it definitely Winter Fairy. That is correct, and these are very much things of not nice place. Quite so. Occupying the position, you're something of a rarity, a young Prosperian who went out into the world and then returned. Many things changed. You grew to know yourself better, and just as you grew to understand the rules of society more. In school, they stressed the importance of presentation, which made you you more carefully consider your own. Regardless of who you know yourself to be, it is your prerogative as a person of quality to choose how the world sees you. Now, we earlier selected our gender, and now if we wish to dress a gender, we can. So earlier, we did pick to present ourselves as, or to be a person, consider ourselves a person, not necessarily a gender. So I'm going to also present as a person, because I think, considering the nature of this being an audience participation game, that seems to make the most sense. So we present ourselves as a person as well. The door to your house squeaks slightly. The walls gathered a little dust since their owner's passing, but otherwise everything is as you recall. Were it not for your guardian's absence, it would be as if time had stood still. Your guardian, a good person, if troubled. Could we see melancholy in their low spirits? Did we rail against their rules and restrictions, even though we now know them for what was best? Or did we never truly understand our guardian as a person? Were we intuitive about them? Were we in our own world and didn't like rules and restrictions? Or were we just stupid? Leaving our guardian a mystery. I never understood why life had to be the way they said it did. They raised you cautiously to prepare for the outside world, and perhaps in an attempt to shield you from the harsh reality of life and prosper. Your own birth parents left you few possessions, and what remnants are left to you are precious. Were our parents merchants? Were they officers who were they land rich and cash poor gentry, or were they eminent scholars? What were our parents? What background do we hail from that our guardian took over after they passed? We like to be high society, so I'm thinking either officer or land rich is probably the two that should be the best for us. Land rich and cash poor gentry in the city makes the most sense for the fact that we like to keep our lifestyle to the degree that we do, but officers who wanted to move up in the world also makes quite a bit of sense. 3 again, land rich, cash poor gentry. It is. They left you the memory of sweet clover, the scent of apples ripening on the tree, and the bluest skies. From them, you learned what home is. They died in an accident, leaving you in the care of your guardian when you were 4 years old. That grief has passed nearly out of memory. You never felt lack growing up. Your guardian ensured it. But now the triple loss of your parents bites deep. The house is empty, save for your 2 small traveling trunks, memories, and Bruno the stalwart, the one servant who remains. You've already put away most of your guardian's memories there. The rest was cleared out by the servants before they left for better prospects. You pass the good oak door leading to the study, yours now, should you choose. Now there is space cleared for you. Your guardian never placed great importance on possessions and would have been furious that you returned. You were not supposed to return. Whew. You lay your hat and silver-headed cane on the side table and look around in the study. Still on the desk is the letter that summoned you here so perceptuously. The envelope bears your guardian's family name, your own, too, as their heir, Montague. The hand on the envelope is so ill it is hard to make out your first name. What is our given name? Or we could make it something else entirely and put in our own. That is a good question, Winter Fairy. What you may have missed is that Prosper, the town that our hometown, the town that we grew up in, is not a safe place. We were sent off to the city to make a life for ourselves, to go to school and become something in the city, away from the dangers of Prosper, and we weren't supposed to get back. But we have perhaps gotten used to a lifestyle that is expensive, and our entire inheritance, now that our guardian has passed, is um, stuck in this house and the land that it is owned. And so we have returned to Prosper, not because we wish to return, but because we need the money. We want to liquidate our assets into money so that we can go back to the city. Unfortunately, we have to deal with the way Prosper works to do it, and that is a complicated and ridiculous task. So that is why we have returned, even though we were never supposed to. So, what should our given name be? Our family name is Montague as the heir to our guardian, but we could be Sasha, we could be Lynn, we could be Aquila, Dominique, Nika, Muffo, Tassi, Eve, Makani, Tao, Amal, Ash, Dara, or we could just decide our own. You like Dominique as a person. Nice. I like Dominique too. It's a good name. All right. We are Dominique Montague. The insignia is that of Prosper. The dread that clutched you when you first saw it was indescribable. The well of sorrows lies before you. One false move and you'll fall in again. You sigh and push the litter away. Shadows amass around you. When you first returned to this house, a small purse holding your spina was sitting here on the desk as if you'd forgotten it, as if it had been waiting for you all this time. Montague and Montague. No, we're not going to do that old joke. Sorry, Drab. You hadn't forgotten it, though. You'd put it in your coat pocket. You'd kept fiddling with it on the coach. However, by the time you reached school, the spina had disappeared, as if into thin air. You remember because you took the purse out on your first night there, seeking to impress the other children. They teased you and called you a liar when the purse was revealed to be empty. You'd stuffed it in the bottom of your commode drawer and left it there. You never did find it again. But here it was. The bag, embroidered with forget-me-nots and knotwork, the colors bright as the day you left. Inside were just 9 spina, 9 thorns emanating power. When you picked them up, they pricked your wrist. You felt them scratch and tear their way into your blood. And you were home again. 9 chances to go wrong. 9 chances to prove you know your worth and make your place in society. So, are we eager to get started? Are we apprehensive about Prosper, or do we realize that the spina here in Prosper is a necessary evil and it is how this world works? Okay. We are going to be realistic per Winter Fairy's choice. Yes, Trav agrees. Fantastic. True. The bell downstairs rings, cutting short your reflections. From the window, you spot a menacing figure on your doorstep, corseted and starched to the extreme, every particle of attire minutely considered, from the trimmings on the hat to the angle of the parasol. The visitor's chin set with determination. It's your neighbor, Jocasta Smythe. Still here after all these years. This should be interesting. The enmity between you and Jocasta Smythe is of a particular and yet baffling nature. As a member of society, she is known as one of the most stalwart presences in town. It is hardly even worth saying that Jocasta is as determined a gossip as ever lived, for her behavior is accepted as point of fact. You cannot recall a time when she was not looking out from her window as you ran across the drive to the neighboring residence, or to the meadows, or into town, judging you all the while. When you first realized that she so disliked you, you were still a child. Her constant scorn led you to believe that you had done something, as a young child, that was terribly wrong. Certainly there were incidences. You and Hippolyta were once inadvertently responsible for the destruction of a quantity of expensive lace in the jaws of an eager hound that should not have been let into Lady Eugene's hall. You were also responsible, again accidentally, for an impressive torrent of soot that tumbled down into Yocasta's sitting room on one occasion when she was entertaining important guests from the city. And once, and you cannot even blame Hippolyta for this, feverish after a child's party and contracting the flu, you bit her when she was attempting to put you in the dog cart to go home. Still, all this should not account for such a lasting vendetta. Over the years, after absorbing the guilt of these occasions, you began to think that it was, in fact, your guardian who had done something to anger her long ago in the past, for she never spoke to them but in harsh tones and with the strictest, meanest of censure, all under the guise of polite discourse. Yet later, you realized that her antipathy for you, in fact, stemmed not from any action you undertook, nor one that occurred around you, but from your parentage. Once you overheard her calling you a cur and a mongrel beast to her lady's maid when she thought no one else could hear. Her contempt was due to scandalous rumors that your birth parents were not wed, that, though of noble blood, you are a love child. It seems she finds this beneath the status of the gentry and beneath the name of Montague that you should be born so. Oof. Harsh. Deep breath. Bruno, your aging, impassive butler, goes to answer the door. You hear his calm, measured tread on the squeaky stairs. He was a mainstay of your childhood now. Only a mainstay of your childhood. Now only he remains to assist you in taking care of the property. A charkeep comes to cook and help with the cleaning, hardly a situation befitting a member of the gentry, but it is all there is now in this in-between stage. How do you feel? Are we ashamed? Do we care? Or do we not mind because we're charming? What do you guys think? One, two, or three? Ooh, well, I'm going to go with two. I like Winterberry's answer. It hardly matters. It would scarcely improve matters with Yocasta. Your relationship is already strained to the edge of courtesy. There's no need to pretend otherwise. Bruno lets your visitor into the sitting room, where you receive her. You feign calm. She enters and takes a seat with all due decorum, but her eyes are constantly darting around, checking for anything out of the ordinary, any little detail that might betray a secret. If the walls that separated your houses were any thinner, you'd have no doubt that she'd be pressing her ear against it with a glass bottle to amplify the sound. Lives have been made and wrecked on such distinctions. Careful. You must be very careful to give the right impression here and to not reveal any information that could be used against you. So, back in Prosper at last, Messer Montague. You stayed away a good long while. Yes, my studies in the city, my guardian. And now you've returned. Well, not a moment too soon. Anyone could have seen that your guardian was ailing. Do you plan to stay with us long? She had maneuvered you already into a position of divulging information that she probably does not need to know and most certainly intends to share with others. It is best in these situations to give out as little information as to your own plans and intentions as possible, lest they come back twisted beyond recognition to haunt you. You are speaking with the town gossip, after all. So, do we charm her with our reply? Twist the question back on her genteelly and inquire after her own relations, or make up something that will elevate her esteem for us? Do we want to be charming, as we know we can be? Do we want to be perhaps a little tricky? Or do we want to make her like us? Finally, maybe, hopefully. We can try. Ooh, Winter Fairy wants to be spicy. Does Trav agree? He agrees. We are going to twist the question back on her genteelly and inquire after her own relations. How is your family? She raises her eyebrows and you wince internally. Your attempt to pivot came out more bluntly than you intended. As well as can be expected, she says icily. I am certain that, should one of my relations go off to school, they would have the courtesy to return before my funeral. Now it will look as though your motives for returning, and for staying away, were almost purely mercenary. You backtrack as best you can. I hear there are a number of changes to the town. She sniffs. Why, it is to be expected. Not as many as in the city, I dare say, where they may demolish and rebuild without restriction, but a good number, though wood is scarce. We have a new theatre, and Lady Eugene is now in charge of the harvest ball each year. Your neighbor leans forward, a malicious gleam in her eyes. It is such a pity that you missed Miss Beaker's wedding. There. Mrs. Miss Beaker, Mrs. Beaker, Mrs. Miss Beaker's wedding. Now that was a fine occasion, but perhaps did you not receive an invitation? One would think you would have given everything. This is a low blow, and she is obviously angling for another piece of gossip. Heaven knows how many rumors she has circulated throughout your years of absence. You start, but she cuts you off. A wedding at that time of year is often a risky proposition. They ought to have waited for the autumn at least. But what is your opinion? You aren't certain if you're to respond about the invitation or lack thereof. Your opinion on summer weddings, or your opinion on weddings in general. She fixes you with a glance that will brook no rebuttal. I would have thought that you would have cared in particular about this matter. Do we respond carefully? Let her know that we don't think highly of gossip, or agree to make her feel at ease? What do we think? How do we respond to her goading? Winterfairy says that we want to make her known that we don't like gossips. Trav, what do you think? I think I'm going to respond carefully this time, Winter Fairy, because we already attempted to waylay her a little bit, and that did not work. So let's let's be careful. She's a force to be reckoned with. And as the town gossip, our reputation might be very negatively affected. I was unable to attend, unfortunately. Up at the hint of gossip. Pressing business matters. They do drive a person hard in the city, she says, though you cannot recall hearing that Yocasta has ever been there. She leans forward, as if in confidence. Or perhaps you do not wish to be there, due to your connection with a certain person, she says, in an exaggerated, knowing whisper. No, that was not it at all, you protest, but this only makes the impression more complete. Do not say so. I cannot think what you mean. Your tone is ever so slightly too sharp, however, and she draws herself up. Well, Yocasta positively bristles with indignation. You haven't heard the end of this, you're certain. You bear out another agonized quarter of an hour of niceties. At last, she leaves. You bite back a sigh. So, how do we think we handled her? Do we think that could have gone better? That as long as is gone, it doesn't matter what she says? Or that we handled the tricky situation with a plume? And honestly, I think that could have gone better. And Trav agrees with me, so we're going to go with that. We know that we biffed it. While your spina remains so low, you are vulnerable. The rules are there to protect you, supposedly. Unfortunately, they can be volatile, relying on the intricate web of secrets that Prosper's founders, the first gentry, wove. Manners are of the essence, and a false move can send you plummeting down. The bell rings again. You contemplate hiding, but Bruno is too quick. A card just arrived, Miss Eyre. This isn't my at-home day, you know. You hadn't planned on establishing one. You'd hoped to be gone before assimilating into town life to that extent. Bruno hands the card to you all the same. Your heart turns over. Hippolyta. Yes, unfortunately it does, Trav. You are absolutely right. Memories. Her parents were best friends of your guardian, and you were constantly thrown together. Much of your childhood is a hazy memory of running to and from her family's estate. You even took lessons together sometimes. If there was trouble to be found, she found it, and let you take the blame for whatever scrape you inevitably got into. So, our childhood best friend, Hippolyta, did we always admire her? Was our friendship full of rivalry, but the better for it? Were we inseparable? Was she our first love? Were our families close, but in truth, we never really got along? How were we as a childhood friend? What is the relationship here? 1 through 5. Give me a number. Trav says inseparable. Winter Fairy also says inseparable. I'm with it. I am absolutely with it. You terrorized your houses and grounds together. You even declared war on the Daemon thralls once, before you realized what it meant to be fallen. You attacked a few lone ones with slingshots and horse chestnuts. When you went away to school, you cried for 2 whole days, not for homesickness, but because you missed her. She never properly answered your letters, though, and in time you fell out of touch. She invited you to her wedding, but you couldn't attend. That much of what you told Yocasta was true. But as to the rest of it, what was your real reason for declining the invitation? Did our studies and affairs detain us to the city? Could we not bear to see her married to someone else? Were we overjoyed for her but stayed away for personal reasons? Did we not want to risk a trip to Prosper, or was it the last thing on our mind at the time? 1 through 5. How in love were we? Ooh, Winter Fairy is a respectable one. Does Trav agree? Well, I'm going to go with 1 because I feel like that's the most honest. He did agree. Fantastic. There's a rustle. You look up. She's in the hallway, face split in a wide grin. Dominique, she says, curtsies, laughs. That laugh. How warmly will you greet her? Do we greet her in the same way? Do we call her by her name, or do we take her hand because no words are necessary? Very astute, Winter Fairy, very astute. All right, we are going to greet her in the same way. Hippolyta. So it is true, you are here again at last. I thought you might never return. You're not the first to think so. But this visitor could not be more different. Although Hippolyta cuts an imposing figure, standing tall and elegant as she does, her manner is all warmth and artless ease, no affectations, nor prying, roving glances. Her light day dress and morning jacket contrast nicely with her olive skin, and the poker straight black hair you used to tease her about is bound up in a complex knot. Her nose is still just a little too long for her face. She looks well. Oh, Mistress Smythe has been here already, has she? Bah, never mind. Don't let her put you off. Together again. Usually it's difficult to pick up threads of a connection that has been severed, whether by inattention or circumstances out of one's control. But sitting there in the afternoon sun, filtering through the dust motes of your sitting room, listening to Hippolyta rhapsodize about this and that, you feel more at ease than you could have imagined. Were it not for the sorrow hovering near, the memory of your loss, you'd be completely comfortable. Indeed, if you were to view a picture of the two of you seated there as an illustration in a book, you would think it the very essence of a congenial afternoon's call, nothing out of place nor left undone. You are surprised in spite of yourself. And of course, there's the assembly ball tonight, which I hope you will attend. She lowers her head and regards you. Dominique, you will attend, will you not? You are startled back into the present. I'm sorry? She fixes you with her adamantine gaze. I would be very pleased if you would attend with me as my personal guest. It has been too long since you went away. You must come and dance. Frances won't mind. Is a special light in her eyes, or perhaps you're imagining it. Now your full attention is on her. You know this game. She will skirt the edges of trouble, and you, if you do not take sufficient care, will fall straight into it. A tricky invitation. Going alone with Hippolyta, who is married, would be courting, but she does seem to wish it, and Hippolyta can be a powerful ally when she puts her mind to it. Despite your long absence, you're not exactly a stranger in Prosper. Your guardian was well respected, by and large, and you're from a good family. If you choose to try your luck alone, the master of ceremonies will surely let you in. It is a local affair. On the other hand, refusing Hippolyta's invitation could anger her, and it is perhaps unwise to lose the regard of your one potential ally directly upon arriving in town. There is a middle path, to attend as Hippolyta's guest, but insist that her spouse accompany you both. That would smooth appearances sufficiently to avoid exciting comment. What will you do? So, do we just go with Hippolyta as Hippolyta wishes? Do we strike that much more careful middle ground, or do we just go and see what happens? We do need to answer her at some point. And we has as of yet not established ourselves in Prosper properly, so being careful here might be for the best. As Winter Fairy also agrees with me, I'm going with that one. She snorts a little, but acquiesces in good grace. Concerned to be seen alone with me. Oh, we could care less about such things than many others. Times have changed, my dear, but I'm sure Frances will be delighted to see you as well. It is settled then. Tonight, you re-enter society. And with that, we have reached chapter 2, and I have been streaming for 2 hours straight, and my voice is starting to go. So that we can start with chapter 2 tomorrow, I will leave it here. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed our time. We have switched games, and we will be doing Weyrwood from here on out. But it has been an honor and a pleasure to have those who came. So take care, everyone. I will see you tomorrow. With that, I must bid you adieu. Bye, guys.